Hi friends, Sarah here. Costumer, gender and film studies students, and fat person. And today it's as the last one of those that I'm gonna talk to you. So the other day I watched the most recent video from PhilosophyTube by Abigail Thorne on food, mind, and body. And in many ways, it is a very good video. I'm going to be somewhat critical here, but I want to say, that I'm not here. This is not a cancel thing. I really appreciate them as a creator and an academic. I think there were some missteps here, but there was also a lot of good, and I want to engage in good faith. I typically find their videos to be nuanced and well researched, and of course, they look amazing. She's a beautiful actor with great. But in this most recent video, something didn't sit right with me, and I've been thinking about it, and I wanted to respond. And of course, I imagine that, I don't even have 1,000 followers. She has 1 million. This is probably, not going to be seen by many. But maybe I can speak to something for those who do see it. So the biggest thing, the thing that felt awkward, is that the video kind of forgets about fat people, which is kind of a misstep when you're talking about, the philosophy of food and the whole mechanics of oppression and anti-fatness. Now, fat people are used to being left out of conversations. We don't usually get to be subjects of medical trials. We don't get consulted about health policy. We just generally are often left out of the conversation, or brought in as sort of monsters and sort of an epidemic that's coming to swallow you all. The assumption, of course, is that fat people are not fat people, we're potential thin people. And that's a really damaging thinking. And I don't think that Abigail Thorne is consciously doing that. I don't, she's a long way from the human bait factory, Ben Shapiro not that long ago suggesting that we were unworthy of medical care. Long way from that. But nuance is a thing, and sometimes our own biases that we're unaware of can lead us to overlook things, which is what I think happened here. And so, as I said, I want to sort of fill in the blank a little bit. And one of the things about not consulting fat people is I disagree with some of the language that she used, not in a, you're terrible kind of way at all. There are better terms than fat phobia. I really dislike fat phobia, and other activists do as well. It frames the conversation around, medical terms, and medical is one of the main areas of oppression for fat people. And phobias are a psychological term. It's really kind of messy. Generally, the term that I use and the term that I will be using is anti-fatness. And using anti-fatness allows us to be a little more specific too. We can talk about anti-fat bias, and we can talk about anti-fat hate. One is generally unconscious and, infects us all. The other is a choice. you choose to hate. You choose to be hateful. And the difference is one of those, you know it when you see it. And so, yes, I will from now on be referring to anti-fatness. And yes, as you know, I don't use the word obesity unless I'm quoting, because again, it's a medical term. It's not a very nice term. Fat is just a neutral descriptor. So it's the one that we choose for ourselves, for a lot of us. I mean, anyone who doesn't want to be called fat, that is their issue. But I will be referring to myself. I usually refer to myself as fat. And to those who are not fat as either thin people, or the other term is straight-sized. That's actually the best term. That is someone who does not wear plus size. And on the subject of fat hate, hi commenters. If you comment about my body without my consent, and you do not have my consent, right now I'm telling you, you do not have my consent, you will be deleted and blocked. So I actually have a similar background in some ways to Abigail Thorne, at least academically. I also studied philosophy, although about 10 years probably before she did. And in my case, I flunked out because ADHD is a trip. But I did learn a lot of the theory. And as I am finishing up a gender studies degree just now, I've also revisited a lot of it. And I'm quite familiar with a lot of the philosophy of the mind. It's something we talk about in gender studies and also in queer theory quite a lot. And I think she does a terrific job of explaining a lot of it. Personally, I would bring in more Hegel, but that's me. So the whole aspect of subjectivity and the way that we develop our minds in response to the world we're in, and in response to systems of power, and the way that our world operates to create a sort of inner diet cop. Personally, I call mine Jeannie, after a particularly nasty ex-coworker. Yeah, that is all solid theory, although as I'm sure has been pointed out, Naomi Wolf is not really a good person to bring into the discussion. Her academic credentials are somewhat suspect now. You can Google that. And yes, there is the aspect of the way in which society degenders fat people, especially fat women, fat femmes. It's more than that, though. It degenders us, desexes us as a aspect of dehumanizing us. This is where we get into problems with the discussion being framed around a straight-sized person, and not bringing fat people into the discussion and bringing fat experiences into the discussion. Because without that, you're going to have a limited understanding of what the actual effects of the dehumanization, of the object of turning fat people into objects, not subjects, is. Because it sucks that the algorithm doesn't think I'm pretty. And that when I speak on topics, people will assume that my opinion comes out of jealousy or because I'm a fat cow. But that's not the real problem. It sucks to be invisible to the algorithm. It kills you to be invisible to the healthcare system. There is it sucks to be denied jobs. I would refer to Aubrey Gordon's work on all of this, and not just a passing citation of maintenance phase. Seriously read What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat, and her columns at Your Fat Friend. And there are a number of fat activists that are important to read on this subject. I love people to list them to add them to my comments. I'll list a few in the doobly-doo. There are serious impacts on fat people of not being seen. So, for example, I also have spent a lot of my life in the theater. And Abigail at one point talks about how when she started her career, she was concerned about gaining weight and was concerned that would, have an impact on her career, and had eating disordered issues because of that. And I'm sorry, that is an awful experience to go through. However, when she says that she thought that would stop her from getting jobs and laughs, says that's not a serious concern because all bodies can be on theater. No, that's not a laughing matter. I have not been on stage for my lifetime in the theater. It has always been clear to me that my body does not belong on stage. I work backstage, I work front of house. I don't go on the stage. And yeah, that part of that is my own brain knowing that, sort of stopping me from doing that. There's a little part of that. Most of it is the reality that casting directors will not cast fat people. It's improving, but I would invite you, if you work in the theater, if by some fluke Abigail actually sees this video, I would invite you to look around and see how many fat bodies you see on stage, and not just small fat bodies. Do you see a body like mine on stage? If you do, are they the butt of the joke? Are they an actual body like mine, or one in a fat suit? And again, are they the butt of the joke? Or a figure of, patheticness? I mean, outside Hairspray, which I love Hairspray, but you do not get, as a rule, you do not get a fat Juliet. And it sucks. But it's like, that's the reality. We do not get cast. And particularly, again, fat women and fat femme-centered people, just very rarely get cast. And when we are, it's because the story is entirely about fatness or is about the joke. And that's not the fault of one particular actor, of course. That is the system. And that is the system that Abigail is trying to discuss in the video, but the limitations when the discussion is around the experience of a straight-sized person, you see the issue of feeling uncomfortable, of having the inner diet cop, but you miss that there are material structures of oppression around bodies in the world. There is the medical stuff, like every interaction I've had with a medical professional almost everyone has been connected to my fatness, and often they don't see me as a person, and they don't, deal with my actual medical concerns. I had a doctor, a seriously legitimate doctor, suggest that my ADHD would go away if I lost the weight. It affected how I got my vaccine. Talking about material things that you do not see. When I went to get my vaccine, it was in a big hall, big municipal thing with the regional health authority. And in Canada, fatness, although we've all been talking about how we're at risk in the pandemic, wasn't treated as a priority in terms of vaccine. So I went with everybody else in my turn, and I lined up and I waited and everything. And when I got to the front of the line, I discovered that all the chairs in the room were, these weak little foldy chairs. And that's a practical concern, that those are not built to take heavy people, because we are not considered in environmental design. And so I had to pull someone aside and say, look, I can't use one of these chairs. And they didn't know what to do with me. The guy at one point suggested that I lie down on the floor. in front of everyone, and a big, no, that was not gonna happen. And they did find that there was one thing that was actually set up for an armchair that was set up to accommodate people, but nobody knew about the accommodations, so they left me standing there for 20 minutes trying to figure this out in front of everyone, and all these people had to go past, looking at me and sort of judging why I was way to the side, and that was embarrassing, and I was not in the best of moods when I saw the person finally, and then to top things off, they were super condescending. So that was a fun experience. Luckily, when I went back for my second job, I said that there had been a problem and I was not going to deal with that again. And so they got me to the chair right then, because I knew it existed. So then I just had to deal with condescension. Fat people have to deal with a lot of condescension. And a lot of that is because our existence is imagined to be a choice. Our existence is constructed to be a choice. And so the assumption is then, if we're choosing this, we must be lazy and we must be stupid. That's always a fun assumption. Oh yeah, and then there's dating. You want to be treated either as disgusting or a fetish object. So yeah, anti-fatness is about a lot more than the internal diet police. It's biopolitics. To refer to Michel Foucault, he talks about how the state, the system of power, maintains that power by constructing certain bodies as normal. Normally those that are compliant and will produce other compliant bodies. And other bodies are constructed as abnormal, as monstrous, as unworthy of care, who are let to die. And this isn't like an organized conspiracy thing. This is power protects power. It's, if you read Foucault, you know what I mean. I don't know that I've done the best job of explaining it, but I attempt to, So a body like mine is constructed as abnormal. This is where you get the shuffling headless monster B-roll, right? We are not real people. We are this threatening monster thing. We are this epidemic. And obviously we are, a drain on the system. We are choosing to be like this. All of that stuff is power operating to construct us as an object that is an abnormal body, and it is being used to have the effect on thin people, on straight-sized people, of creating that fear of becoming us that leads to the experiences that Abigail Thorne is talking about. She fears the cake because she's been taught to fear the cake, because she's been taught to fear becoming me. And that's why you can't talk about the fear of the cake. You can't talk about the internal diet police without talking about bodies like mine. Because it is bodies like mine that, being the object, that create that aspect of the subjectivity, that create that fear of the other, that create that fear of fatness. And yeah, that is how this operates. And when you center the discussion around changing that around the experience of the thin person, you're continuing that treating us as an object, even though that's obviously not what a decent person intends to do. We just perpetuate the systems that we're a part of unless we recognize them and change them. And it's kind of funny and kind of interesting. There's one group of people who I would think should recognize this system, should recognize the non-compliant, unusual, monstrous body being treated as an epidemic, and used to frighten the quote-unquote normal people into being normal. And also to recognize the experience of having that affect the healthcare you get. I'm not saying that the experience of being fat in an anti-fat world is analogous exactly to being trans in an anti-trans world, but it rhymes. There are parallels. The whole experience of being a non-compliant, deviant body in a world that wants to use that to make the people who aren't like you discipline themselves. It rhymes. Our experiences will be different. But the mechanics of the oppression, yeah, they aren't that creative with the mechanics of the oppressors aren't that creative. They tend to use the same playbook. And that's when I would bring up the fact that the aspect of anti-fatness that I have not talked about, because it is not my experience. Anti-fatness is rooted in anti-blackness. It's rooted in racism. And it's rooted in ableism. My experience of disability is an invisible one. It's the ADHD. So this isn't an experience I can speak to. And my experience of racial issues is as a mixed race Middle Eastern person, not as a Black person. So these are experiences that I cannot speak to. But they are, again, the oppression rhymes. The oppressors are singing from the same hymn sheet. And we are all treated as non-compliant. And our bodies being different is framed as a choice or as a tragedy. And in all of our cases, we are let to die for the majority. And so, we are natural allies. I think we ought to be, in the sense of, I can hold your space for you, you can hold space for me. There is an alliance because we do share a common enemy. But we are not trained to see ourselves as that way, because that would threaten the power. So we all have our inner biases that we have to work on. I want to highlight those resources because I want to make sure to try and not do what I feel like Abigail fell into doing, of sort of not recognizing the sort of lifting up the other voices. And it's a shame that she didn't do that in this video, because normally as I said, I admire her work, and normally she does lift up the voices of the more marginalized. Just think that was overlooked in this case. And I've heard a few fat activists comment on this video, and some more charitably than others. So I would also, recommend looking at some of those and trying to listen, even when that maybe they're not having the most charitable reading. We all come at these things from the experience that we have. But I try to see people in the best light I can, sort of the most realistic good intentions, and assume that something like this was an accidental overlook, or just trying to fit too many things into one video. I know what that's like. You can sort of accidentally end up leaving stuff out. But this is the problem when you have only one story, and when the story is about only about straight sized people, or small fat people. It can sort of dominate the conversation, and that's what has happened with a lot of with the whole field of body positivity. Is it's become a way for small fat people and thin people to sort of remind each other that they aren't that fat. Which is a bit, or to focus entirely on the issue of confidence. And confidence is important. Confidence is lovely, and I think these people have great intentions, a lot of them, at least to start out with. The idea is like, if I can wear this dress, then you can wear the dress, or you can wear the thing. But like, I can't if they don't sell it in my size. And like, it's not all about eating the cake, because if I ate a cake on video, do you know what my comments would look like? Not to mention that I try to avoid cake, because even though I don't build my life around losing weight, trying to eat healthy is important for me. So I try to avoid sugar, not that I should have to, there's my internal anti-fatness, is feeling like I have to justify, what I eat and to other people, and also why I won't eat the cake. This stuff is complicated, and I'm getting derailed. So here's an analogy. Okay, a lot of straight blokes are afraid to hug their friends in public or hold hands, because they don't want to be seen as gay or feminine or girly, right? And I'm sad for Bob that he is afraid to hold hands with his friend Brad. That's a shame. We should all be able to express our full human emotion, right? But when we don't make Bob the center of the discussion around homophobia, we don't give him a pride float, because as much as it's a shame that he's denying himself the full emotional range, that isn't the concrete main effects of misogyny and homophobia. It's an important element of feminism to discuss this. I love bell hooks's work, but it's not how we center that conversation. So yeah, when the largest platform to talk about this stuff is entirely around the experience of a straight-sized person, it is like Bob centering the discussion of homophobia and misogyny around the fact that he doesn't want to hug his buddy. Go hug your buddy, go eat your cake, go wear the dress. Joy is important. But you gotta say, this is not the most important aspect of the conversation. If you have a platform, you gotta say, here's the other people who this is a major problem for. To bring it back to the philosophy of it all, Abigail talks about subjectivity and what is the subject and what is the object. To bring it back to the subject of philosophy, Abigail talks about subjectivity, what it is to be a subject and not an object in the world. And this is the central idea of philosophy of the mind, certainly one of them. But there's an important factor in subjectivity, and I would prefer to Hegel on this. A subject isn't a subject in isolation. We don't develop subjectivity simply by looking in the mirror. That's an important aspect, but we develop subjectivity by interacting with other subjects. In developing thought and ideas, there is, according to Hegel, there is the thesis, your experiences, your thoughts, your ideas, and the antithesis, the opposing or different experience. And you need to put them together to, develop synthesis, to develop thought, to move forward. So this is why recognizing the subjectivity of others is so important. Because if we aren't recognized as a subject, if we are only recognized as an object, it becomes very hard for us to see ourselves as a subject, to see ourselves as a full person. And if we see ourselves as a subject but treat others as an object, we aren't having that healthy, helpfully synthesis. We're having, we're constantly stuck with just our own thesis. And this is why it's so important for philosophy to be a dialectic, to be a discussion between previous philosophers, between our colleagues, and between other people that we respect and treat as fellow subjects. And so this ultimately is the center of what I think is missing in this particular video, is the lack of an antithesis, in the form of another subject who has the experience of a fat person, because what Hegel doesn't get into, but what we're recognizing now, is that how we move on from a lot of these oppression stuff, how we reshape this power, is when we, who are the others, see each other and develop our relationships not with the majority, not with the power holder, with the default. When we develop discussions between each other, when we recognize the subjectivity of each other, and we combine to reference Harvey Milk, we raise up the S's. We got to give them hope. We get all the 10% together. we got a majority. This is how we are making change, you know. This is why it matters to me as a cis person to hold space and discussions with trans people and with non-binary people, and me as a fair-skinned person to hold the space and discussions with dark-skinned, racialized people. As an immigrant to Canada, I feel it's really important to me to hold space and discussion with Indigenous people, to sort of get away from the colonizers. And you know, to change those power dynamics. That's, I believe, how we change things. And yes, that's me going away from philosophy into activism and stuff. But like I hope that you understand some of what I mean. And so it's sort of in that spirit that I want to offer this video, even though, like I said, I'm sure that Abigail won't see it. I'm just a tiny person, but to those who do see it, I hope this will kind of serve as a bit of an antithesis, not a direct antithesis, but a differing experience, a different thing that perhaps you can develop some synthesis out of. To have, you know, this, to create this dialectic that we need between those of us who are the non-compliant bodies, so that we can try and, you know, figure out how we do things differently. So yeah, I'm offering this as a part of a dialectic, and not as a takedown or by any means. I think, as I said, that Abigail Thorne and usually very good at understanding the power that they hold with the size of their platform. But in this case, they just kind of missed it, because sometimes we don't see the nuances that we need to see. So that was kind of a ramble. I do that sometimes. And like I said, I offer this as part of a conversation, as part of the dialectic. So if you want to continue the conversation in my comments, you are most welcome. I would, however, reiterate that although I discuss some of my experiences as a fat person, I do not welcome, nor do I consent to you commenting on my body. Fat shaming will get you deleted and banned on my channel. And this also goes for concern trolling. My health is not your business. And I have a zero tolerance for that. But if you want to discuss things, please feel free, that are not that. So channel stuff, I am working on a long video about costumes at the moment. And I have a few other things in the works too that I hope you guys will enjoy. And I obviously have links to Patreon and stuff like that in my doobly doo, if you want to do that. And the one thing that I will leave you with, because I think it is a good aspect of that video, that although I say it's not really about eating the cake, the discussion of joy is important, because for people who are the marginalized, the liminal, the monstrous, to the mainstream, they want us to not have joy. So queer joy, fat joy is an act of resistance and an act of rebellion when they don't want you to have it. So yeah, joy is important. I will back that up. It's just, we got to do the work too. So yeah, go find your joy, and we'll keep talking and we'll keep working.